This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
The following episode of Charlotte, a City of International Success, is brought to you by Central Piedmont Community College and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Coming up next on Charlotte, a City of International Success, I will interview Hadi Atri, CEO of RE/MAX Executive, and his wonderful journey to Charlotte and the difference he's making. Stay with us. Welcome to Charlotte, a City of International Success. I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Today, our guest is Mr. Hadi Atri. He is the president and CEO of RE/MAX Executive. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Well, pleasure having you, and you're originally from Iran.
Correct.
What part of Iran were you born?
I was born in Tehran. And,
Tehran?
Yes. And my parents moved to Khorramshahr when I was like 2 years old, and which is the southern part of Iran, which is a port city. And I grew up there until I was about 14 years old.
Oh, wow. So now, as far as the family, you said your parents moved. So your father, what did he do for a living?
My father was in the transportation business. He was in forwarding and shipping business. And he lost his father when he was 14 years old.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yes, so he was one of 6 kids, and he was actually pretty much like me, number 4. And
you also have 6, or your total 6 siblings?
yes, 1 girl and
One
5
girl
brothers.
and 5 boys?
Yes.
Where are you in that?
I'm in the middle. Actually, there is 20-year difference between the youngest and the oldest. My oldest brother is 20 years older than my youngest brother. We kind of grew up in a city that was, at that time, was a smaller city. Like they had 200,000 population compared to Tehran, that probably at that time was 5 million population.
Oh my, okay.
So I kind of felt a little bit out of place, you know, as far as Khorramshahr was concerned. But I went to a private school there, and at the age of 14, I decided that I wanted to go somewhere else. I was bored, and
Age of 14, you decided to go
I was actually started when I was 12 years old, but 14 I was very determined to make my parents. Originally I was going to go to Switzerland, so I started learning French.
Yeah.
Went to school, and but then my older brother went to England. And so my parents said, okay, if you're going to go anywhere, you're going to go to England.
Yeah, because you were so young.
Yeah. So I guess we decided, I was in the 8th grade, getting ready to go to 9th grade. And that's when, it was September 1968, when I got on a plane and flew to London.
Oh my.
And, yeah. And I arrived in London, and my brother and my cousin who lived there picked me up at the airport. Everything was exciting back then.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you just went, so there were no like visas and all this.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you were so
Back
young.
then, we didn't have to have a visa to go to Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, Europe, we did not have to have a visa. Before the revolution, you could travel with Iranian passport pretty much anywhere you wanted to go. Okay. And US actually would give you a 4-year visa, and it was very easy to travel. So going to Europe was not an issue.
Because there were no political issues.
There were no political issues.
There was nothing. You know, when you were growing up, there was just nothing.
But no, there was nothing like today. You know, world was
God.
totally different back then.
Yes, you can't even compare.
So no, we basically, actually, you could walk into the gate to see your passengers flying overseas and everything.
Oh,
you know,
I know. I
it was
used to love
totally
that.
different. Yeah,
Yes.
you could actually go all the way to the gate. So there were no securities like today. But anyway, yes. So I went to England at when I was 14 years old, and My parents actually appointed a guardian for me in England, so that
Yeah.
financially and school-wise and everything else, my brother was not really in charge because he was, not old. He was going to school himself.
Yeah, yeah.
So Mr. Sellers was my guardian, and after about 2 weeks in London, he came and got me. And initially, I went to Brighton, and which is in southeast of England, and it's about 2 hours from London by train. And the purpose was to go and learn English.
Oh.
Yes. So
Yeah, because you were learning French.
I didn't,
You didn't know
I
you were
didn't,
going
I
to
didn't know
England.
any English, and so I was actually placed in a family, and Mr. and Mrs. Hadley. It's funny how you remember, how you remember certain things from so long ago, and I can't remember things from yesterday. So.
Those are special
Those
memories.
are special memories, and very nice couple. And I moved to their home, and actually, that's when it hit me that, oh my gosh, what did I do? What am I doing here? And because up to then, it was all fun. I had 2 weeks in London with my brother and, my cousin, and sightseeing and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, I was dropped off at this home.
Yeah.
So it was very different. And
For many reasons, I would think, because you're so young, that's the first thing. And the culture is very different.
culture was different.
I think even the basic things like food would be different.
Very much so. I think you don't appreciate a lot of things until you don't have it. And in England, I'm not saying it's the same today.
Yeah.
But
in those days.
Taking a bath was an event. And basically, I'm used to showers.
Yeah.
So this household did not have a shower. They had a bathtub. And so my first issue was, how am I trying to take a shower?
Yeah, without making a
It
mess.
all became a mess. So, and then, I was pretty much using too much water, according to Mrs.
yeah.
Hadley.
Yeah.
Because
They're conserving water.
very conserve
Yeah.
water. And funny thing is that refrigerators that we take for granted, they didn't have one. They had a little ice box, and they have a cooked lunch or cooked dinner, not both meals. And I went to school during the day, so
Wow.
my cooked meal was at night. And the first meal that I had was a heart, a boiled heart, couple of boiled cabbages, and a boiled potato.
Boiled heart.
Boiled heart. I guess it was sheep's
Okay.
heart, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
But it was not even cut. It was just basically,
Just
it
boiled
was
heart.
put in front of me, and
Wow,
that,
very
that
different.
didn't went well. And so it was very,
Yeah. Painful.
very painful, and I couldn't tell him that I want something else.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't know the language.
I didn't know. Well, first of all, it was very
Yeah.
uncomfortable. How would you feel like going
Yeah,
to
go to
somebody's
somebody's
house?
house
And even though they were getting paid, I felt like I'm
Yeah.
imposing,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I ate, I went up to my room and basically was very upset, very sad. But I was determined to hang in.
Yeah.
And so I was there for about 8 months. I went to a language school, and then I was sent to a boarding school in Taunton, in Somerset, England, which was very strict. I refer it to as a prison, and you have to get up 6:30 in the morning, take a shower. You got 10 minutes or 5 minutes to take a shower. Better be downstairs by 7 if you want breakfast. If not, you miss breakfast, you had it. So again, very strict, and it was outskirts of Taunton, which was, you couldn't even go to shop for anything. On Saturdays, they used to drop us into town,
Yeah.
where we could spend like Saturdays for 4 hours. And that's when I went and got a hamburger. And,
Promoted
so,
yourself with
you know,
food.
so to have some normal food, because even in boarding school it was
Yes.
horrible. You had porridge in the morning for breakfast, a piece of toast if you're lucky,
Oh.
and it was tough.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was the beginning, and of the whole thing, and that's where I stayed 2 years.
Then you learned your English, obviously,
I learned my
because it's
English.
like an immersion.
You know, it was
you
a matter
can't.
of having to.
Yeah.
Actually, I was a player in a Shakespeare play during that period of time, because they
Oh,
had
wow.
play, they had outdoor play, and I was Lysander in one of the I guess Shakespeare's books.
Yeah.
So, but you know, again, you had no choice.
Yeah.
You had to do it.
But it's a great experience, because you not only just learned culture, you know, something totally different. You were so young, and you were determined to make it, because most of the kids at that young age give up, call mommy and daddy and saying, "Take me home," you know.
Right.
But first, maybe you didn't have a chance to call or opportunities to call, like in
My
those
parents
days.
were very strict,
But-
to my surprise. I never thought that my parents would be that strict, because I remember we had allowances in, you know, like Mr. Seller would give me, and there were kids that we had a store in the boarding school that you could buy chips and, you know, cookies or whatever.
Right.
I didn't have money to buy chips and cookies, and it wasn't because my parents didn't have money. They did have money. And I had a friend that his parents sent him money, and he bought chips and cookies, and he actually would loan me money.
To buy cookies and chips.
So when we, so that he would tell his dad that, hey, I loaned him $10 or 10 pounds at a time.
Parents, yeah.
So he would get my dad to pay him, and my dad would say, no, don't loan him any money. And so it was kind of a very, I was angry at the same time. I was saying, why am I suffering? Why am I going through all this stuff?
Yeah.
But I wasn't willing to give up. You know, I wasn't going
Yeah.
to say, I'm coming back, you know, and
Sure was a lesson.
it was.
So after you finished, what did you do? How did you do a bachelor's degree somewhere?
Yeah, well, I started going to Plymouth Polytechnic at a time, which was in Cornwall in England. And my older brother at the time came to US to get his master's and get his PhD. He went to Albany, New York. And so my parents came to visit one summer in England, and they saw the way I mean, I had a room, basically.
Yeah.
A room with no heater, no kitchen, no nothing, you know. I was living, as far as they were concerned.
Yeah.
But to me, it was fine, you know, but they just weren't happy with the status quo. So they said, let's go to visit your brother in the US, you know,
Okay.
and we go to California. And I said, okay, I don't mind going for a couple of weeks.
Sure.
So we came to New York, and my brother came and visited with us when we were staying at the hotel. And then we went to California. My dad had a friend in California, and I liked US. So I felt like it was very nice. And then my parents kind of told me that we think it's better for you to, you know, transfer, go to US, and since you have your older brother there, it's better, stand-up living is better, you know, and it's just different. And I said, fine, that's fine. And so
how you came here.
September of 1976, I flew to New York
Oh, wow.
on a Pan Am flight, and arrived in New York, and then got on an Allegheny airline and went to Albany, and to where my brother was at the time. And I went to Albany. It was a gloomy, rainy day, and so I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and he went to school there, and I visited the school in Albany. I didn't like it, so my brother's wife had a brother who went to NC State. So I sent my transcript to him, and I was kind of late for application of going to school. So they got me somehow through my transcript to UNC Charlotte. And basically, I went to UNC Charlotte, and they gave me 70 hours credit.
Wow,
which
so you
didn't-
graduated from UNC Charlotte.
Yeah, so I didn't really
wow.
understood all these hours
of
of
course,
stuff
yeah.
because it was different
Yeah.
the way, but hey,
You came here to
whatever, I
Charlotte.
came here.
Beautiful.
So it was really, I loved Charlotte. I didn't care for the Raleigh that much. And I decided to make Charlotte home, you know, eventually.
Quickly, after you graduated, you know, when we were talking before the show, you said that all the time you really wanted to go back home.
Correct.
You know, so after your graduation, you went back home, right?
I did actually, right at, I think it was summer of 78.
Yeah.
I went back to Iran, and because the intention was always to go to my dad's business.
Sure, yeah.
And so,
And
but
you had, your bachelor's was in
yeah,
business.
yes, it was in
So for
business.
that
Yeah, for
intention,
that
yeah.
purpose. And so, when I got back, at that time, you have to serve 2 years in the military. It's mandatory.
Oh,
So the purpose was to go and register to join the military.
Ooh.
And I did. You know, I wanted to get it over with. And so I went into the military, or at least I registered, and I was supposed to, and I got there was like July of 1978. And I was supposed to turn myself in to serve in, I guess, November. And of course, when I was going back and forth to where I was supposed to go to
Yeah.
register for, I always saw demonstration in the street. It was kind of starting to get a little bit
Politically
politically,
unrest,
yeah. So I kept telling my dad, I don't think it's a good idea to stay here. I think I need to go back, you know. He said, no, nothing is going to happen, you know. And at the time, the Shah was ruling the country. But of course, I didn't feel the same way.
yeah.
So in
found a way to come out, right?
I somehow wiggled my way
To get here.
get back here. I got an
Wonderful.
I-20. I got a
Yeah.
from UNC.
Now, did you
and-
say you went to Chapel Hill for
Yes.
your master's degree?
Yes, I did because
Okay.
at that time again, my I guess second cousin was
Yeah.
was helping me because I had to send my documentation
Sure,
over there,
yeah.
and I got there and I finished, and then 1979, and I graduated in 1980.
You got your MBA.
Yeah, MBA,
And then you
came-
moved to Charlotte.
I moved back because I was going back and forth on the
Sure.
weekends because I was here for a while,
Yeah.
and I liked Charlotte a lot. So when I decided to start a career, which at that time actually the revolution has already taken place.
Yeah.
There was, I could go back home. My parents couldn't help me because there was
Nope.
they couldn't
No
send any money,
communication,
so I had
nothing.
to start doing something.
Yeah.
And I went interview a lot of different jobs. I either was overqualified or underqualified,
Ah.
you know. And so somebody said, "Hey, go and get your real estate license and
I
get into
love
real
it.
estate."
Your career started there. You know, it's amazing for me to just think about where you came from, and then just somebody suggesting so, and go ahead and get your real estate license, and here you are today. So, with the real estate, very quickly, you know, it was you started selling homes, right?
Yes.
And then you got that didn't work, or you didn't like it, and then you went for a general contractor license. What were you building?
Well, I started working. My goal was when I first started,
Yeah.
got my license. I wanted to work with a company that had some connections into Charlotte.
Okay.
So I interviewed with 4 or 5 different real estate companies. All of them wanted me, obviously.
Of course, yeah, cool.
But one company in particular didn't want me.
Okay.
And the reason was simple. The person that was interviewing me said, "Well, you're from Iran." I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, you got our hostages. You know, well, how are you gonna sell houses?" I said, "I don't have your hostages. You know, I'm not with you."
You're not holding them.
So but that made me want to work for that company.
I got you.
So I went over her head, and actually at the time, the owner of the company was Ben Douglas. Ben Douglas's father was the mayor of Charlotte,
Wow.
and they named the Charlotte Douglas
Douglas
Airport. So I thought, that's where I want to be. I want to be
Super.
connected. So I worked for that company for 3 years, and I got to know the real estate business, and I evolved into commercial real estate,
Okay.
and I ran into a developer at the time, and I started working with that developer, and they were building houses, and they were doing some condos in Columbia, South Carolina, some stuff in Charlotte. So I decided to get my general contractor's license just to learn the business.
Yeah, great.
And that's when I got that, and then evolved into construction.
Construction. And I do know, how did you start this? Because you said when the recession hit, you know, of course, everybody, you know, was going crazy. Everything they've heard, you know, people have lost their stuff.
Right.
There was nothing. So, and you said you started acquisitions. You started RE/MAX Executive at
Yes.
that point in time?
At the time, it was a different RE/MAX. It was RE/MAX Select. But what happened is during, I guess, 1988 to 1994, I was doing some commercial development. And everything was fine. And then 94 was really a bad year. And as far as
Yeah.
shopping center, leasing and stuff. So I sold pretty much everything. And I went and started working with a real estate company, local real estate company in 94.
Yeah.
Basically started all over again, selling real estate. And knowing the development business, I kind of got back into it. And then when the recession started in 2007 and 8, basically when they started the recession was,
You started
I started the real estate
acquisition.
company.
So
yes.
tell me, I have probably about 3 minutes or so. You know, in a business like this, this is very volatile. You started small. You said something about 19 employees, and now what is the size of your RE/MAX Executive?
We have 310 agents and about 38 employees,
And you're located in North Carolina and
North and South Carolina.
North and South Carolina.
We have 11 offices,
Oh wow.
and our volume was over 1.3 billion last year.
Okay, so my big question for you, this is a lot, because in order to maintain this many people and their lives, I think it'll be very stressful. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, how do you manage your stress? And then the other one is, how do you get inspired, you know, to get up, because something like this is 24/7. So how do you get inspired to get up every morning, you know, to do what you do?
I love what I do. You know, I have a
Ah.
passion for what I do, and stress is something that comes with anything. If it's worth doing, you're going to get stressed. And my release, my stress is basically I run. I have a supporting wife that understands what I do, and I
Your
think
beautiful wife,
that's-
Susan?
Yes, and I
Yes.
think she understands the
Yeah.
real estate because she was in the real estate business,
okay.
and that's how we met. So, having said that, you know, I actually look forward to getting up in the morning and going to work. I can't wait for the challenges. And what keeps me going is I have a big family. I have 350 some odd people that depend on me. So I
Yes.
can't let them down. So that's the way I handle it.
Wow, that is very true. That's very true,
Yeah.
because you have, and I know you're very active in the community, giving back to the community that you pretty much, you know, invested most of your life here. And so I think your vision to have a direct economic impact in Charlotte through your business and economic mobility for all your agents when they start with you, you know, they probably don't have, but you're so stable, your company is so stable, they're able to actually better themselves, right?
Correct, and that's the goal. You know, my
Yeah.
job is to make sure that every one of our agents, associate,
Yeah.
improves their life, their standard of living, and if they join us, you know, they do better every year. And I think that's what gives me joy, and that gives me energy to continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you have done so much for the community, and the community has given back to you, and you're part of Charlotte, and you're making a huge difference, especially in the economic development as well as economic impact. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it's definitely my pleasure. And thank you for watching Charlotte, a city of international success. I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Please join us again next time, right here on WTVI PBS Charlotte.
A production of PBS Charlotte.